All right. Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. Today, we bring you another free webinar from Desert Waters Correctional Outreach on a complex topic that never ceases to be of extreme importance in corrections work setting, that of building workforce cultures that genuinely support staff wellness. Accordingly, today's program is entitled Embedding Staff Wellness in Corrections, Building Correct Cultures That Care. I'm Justin Stevens, the Chief Operating Officer with Desert Waters Correctional Outreach. Desert Waters is a 501c3 nonprofit incorporated in Colorado in 2003, almost 23 years ago. Our mission is to improve the well being of corrections and other public safety professionals through training, consulting, and other essential resources to foster resilience, mental health, and overall well being in these challenging professions. Today, Desert Waters is conducting groundbreaking research in correctional staff wellness and has offered award winning training to tens of thousands of correctional employees and family members across the nation and overseas. The instructors uh, we've certified have also trained many more tens of thousands of staff across the country and abroad. Please visit desertwaters.com to learn more about what we do. And if you like these free webinars, please take a moment and like us on Facebook and follow us on LinkedIn. Now to today's presenters. Katerina Spinaris is Desert Waters Executive Director and Founder and a licensed professional counselor. Her professional experience includes developing wellness curriculum for family members, conducting research on staff wellness and consulting regarding the building of staff wellness programs. She originated the term corrections fatigue, and one of the courses she authored, From Corrections Fatigue to Fulfillment, CF2F, received the 2016 Commercial Product Award of Excellence by the International Association of Corrections Training Personnel. She recently helped develop Desert Water's unique safety net accreditation program for correctional staff wellness and has authored and co authored 4 books for correctional staff wellness. Greg Morton is a Desert Waters research advisor. Greg worked for Oregon State Corrections nearly his entire adult life. He started his career at Oregon State Penitentiary as an academic counselor, then served as OSP's staff training coordinator, leadership program manager, staff training and professional development administrator, and labor relations administrator. He developed and was lead author of the 6 moving parts model of correctional employee training effectiveness, a research based system that describes the crucial mechanisms that agencies must implement in order to ensure efficient and effective use of staff training resources, published by the National Institute of Corrections, U.S. Department of Justice. Greg has spoken at numerous conferences and training sessions around the country, has instructed at the university and community college levels, and has taught parenting classes for incarcerated persons. He holds a Master of Science degree in Industrial and Organizational Psychology, and his concern for the health and skills of the corrections workforce has been his motivation throughout his career. So, with that, let me turn it over to Katerina and Greg.
Thank you. Good morning again and good afternoon, everybody, taking precious time to be with us today. This is a topic very, very near and dear to my heart. And I was thinking earlier today that maybe a while ago, people did not tend to think that the words caring and corrections were meaningfully tied into a sentence together. But more and more people recognize that we have to have caring correctional cultures if we're going to achieve the agency's mission statement and everybody's well-being stay protected in the meantime. So our goal today will be talking about how to build from day one cultures that nurture and protect and promote cultures that not just talk about resilience, but talk about meeting needs proactively and acknowledging situations proactively and as an intervention on an ongoing basis as part of the way we do things around here, not just when there's a huge critical incident. So let's go to the next slide is to talk about our key points that we'll cover today. And one I semi-mentioned, that wellness, the well-being of employees and by extension their families, and also the incarcerated population need to be on the front, upfront and centered from day one, not an afterthought, not after a tragedy, and not as a flavor of the month approach. And that we have to recognize that there are people at all levels that are leaders, formal or informal, that can either model and reinforce wellness or not. And we need to nurture and support and train and equip those leaders at all levels. Then the whole thing of taking theory into practice, translating any kind of wellness training, any interventions, any resources, in how to embed them into daily practice so they become, again, part of the way we do things. It's like you brush your teeth before you go to bed, kind of thing. And we have to remember that it's to our benefit, even if you have to put out some funds and invest some time, energy, and money up front. It will be part of the solution regarding attracting and retaining staff, part of the solution to the crisis we are facing, the catastrophe really we are facing regarding um, retention, recruitment and retention. Wellness culture will be a magnet. And staff wellness is a key to long-term success because I keep saying we cannot, nobody who uses tools would even dream of building something or fixing something with broken down tools. We have to have staff in shape if we want to have long-term success and of course short-term success, ongoing success. We need to have staff that are in shape to deliver. So let's go to our first slide that we are going to unpack all that. Greg and I today. So look at the next slide, please. Okay, wellness, culture, and corrections. And from day one, it needs to be a message that this is important, this matters. It's not just how tough you are, it's also how do you stay in shape, not only physically, but emotionally, even spiritually. And not have jokes like when they take your measurements for a uniform. Hey, I'll see you next year when you're 2 sizes larger. Or did you know that the requirement for working corrections is getting a divorce within the first 3 years of employment? Like things like that, and kind of cracking jokes and making it like it's what's expected. And like you're gonna have to choose between your truck and your wife. That kind of those kind of jokes. Then the whole thing of leadership, being trained and equipped, and the message they give out, and also the role modeling they're doing, like what kind of shape am I in? If I'm going to talk about staff wellness, what shape am I in? Because if I'm huffing and puffing going up a set of stairs, 50 pounds overweight, and I'm talking about staff wellness, it's like people may look at me and say, well, how do you take care of yourself? And the whole thing of staff wellness being mission critical is something that Greg has pounded into my head from the first day I met him, practically many years ago, back I think in 2009, that we cannot achieve the mission of the organization without staff wellness. Therefore, it is mission critical. Everything hinges upon it. And we have been very slow to recognize that. We have been very slow to put two and two together that broken people cannot deliver intact goods, not for very long anyway. So let's go to the next slide and talk a little more on that. Um, so what is this mysterious term staff wellness that we keep talking about? And given that we're talking about corrections here, the definition is geared for that, that it's about performance that is safe and effective in the environments you guys work in, which are high stress, high responsibility work environments. A lot is demanded of you. Not a lot comes back to replenish your needs. So it's about being able to perform and keeping it together and doing a professional job in a very high stress, e- extremely high pressure situation sometimes where you have to make decisions between life or death, while maintaining your ability to be physically safe and healthy, mentally, psychologically, socially in your interactions with people, and then occupationally, where there is still meaning regarding the job. There is some job satisfaction. There is a sense of investing in and not just counting the days to retirement, starting 10 years before your retirement. So so it's a kind of a specific kind of wellness definition that ties into the fact that you're in a pressure cooker and you have to really strive and have an environment that supports your being able to stay well, because it's like swimming upstream. It's adverse. It doesn't come easy. It's you have to practically fight for it very intentionally, and not just you by yourself, but the whole system, the whole, from executive staff, from actual legislators, all the way down to line staff. So let's go to the next slide. And what does it look like when you have a caring correctional culture? Like I said, in the past, people would think caring correctional culture. Are you kidding me? Um, like, no, that's what we're after. First of all, it's about awareness and brutal admission that yes, we have stressors that undermine people's well-being, and they're practically inescapable. It's like an unavoidable occupational hazard to be exposed to those things. And so there are different types of stressors we talk about in Desert Waters training. We have operational stressors, which are about the overtime shift work, equipment issues, even temperature of the building where people work. These are all operational things. Then we have organizational stressors, which are about relational issues, like do staff get along with each other? How do supervisors treat their subordinates? What are the exchanges between the staff and the incarcerated people they manage? How do they do evaluations? How do they do promotions? These are all organizational stressors. Is there bullying going on? And then we have traumatic stressors, whether people are exposed to them head on, they're right there, or they read about them later and see the video later. And all these things are happening all the time, and they have an impact. How could they not have an impact? You'd have to be made out of steel and concrete to not be affected. And they're relentless. They're happening over and over and over again. So we have to admit to that and say, yes, that will erode a person's health unless really strong measures are put in place. I don't care how strong and healthy and smart you are when you hired on, those things will erode people's resilience and health. Just this lack of enough sleep, that would be the first one. Throwing people into whatever, deep depression, all kinds of issues that happen physically, just that. And a lot of times we start people at the night shift, morning watch, and their health gets undermined right from the get go. Then we have the need to provide supportive services and resources that are relevant and correction specific, that people feel like, okay, I'm understood here. I don't have to explain to you everything I do before you can help me. And having resources that are affordable and confidentiality is applied. Then we need to hear from people anonymously, like what is going on, what's working, what's not working with your colleagues, what's not working with, or what is working with maybe supervisors, with everybody. Like hear from people what is going on a, like an annual basis. That would be the ideal to hear. And if it's not a survey, maybe even some other way, but surveys that are anonymous are the safest probably way to get data. And the two big things that are important are prevention and intervention. And we need measures that don't wait till the bottom falls out. We don't wait till we have another suicide and then we roll out a little training over it about suicide prevention. No, we need to do things ahead of time, knowing what's coming. We need to be proactive. We have enough data, and you'll see a slide shortly, to know that that stuff is practically inevitable. So we have too many converging stressors, and we need to do something about it ahead of time to to not completely wipe out the effect, but reduce it. And then having appropriate interventions that hit the mark, that are relevant, that are specific to people's situation and their families who are affected. So we need to respond to those things and not pretend it's not there, not deny it, not minimize it, not shame people for being human and being affected by the environment and shutting them up. So that takes a lot of thinking and investing, but the alternative, you know what the alternative is. We go to another memorial service, we have a bunch of people quitting within 2 weeks of hiring on. Um, we have people going to sleep and not waking up in the morning. So we have divorces, we have all kinds of things. So let's go to the next slide. So partly of why do we need to pursue staff wellness? It is survival at the most basic. It's about the survival of the future of the corrections profession. I don't think we can keep going at the rate we're going and without doing major interventions around staff wellness. It's like trying to drive your car across the country and you have a broken down engine, really malfunctioning. It's like, whoa, better take it to the garage before you set off on your trip. So we want people to fulfill the agency's mission, be professional, safety and security. Well, they have to be in shape. They have to be able to focus and remember and stay awake, and not lose it with somebody with their temper flaring. We need it for staff retention to go up. And we have preventable harm that can be reduced. And it's to both incarcerated people and staff, because staff leak. When they're not doing well, they're going to take it out on each other, and they may end up taking it out, as we've seen it way too many times, very tragically, on the people they're managing. And mm, and they end up making victims, and they themselves are malfunctioning seriously. So we have legal liability issues, and they can be reduced. They're all preventable. So pursuing self wellness is the right thing to do morally, because we know we're putting people in harm's way. It's like sending people into battle, but not giving them a gun and a helmet or whatever they need to have. Um, and it's smart because it prevents the bleed. It prevents people malfunctioning. It prevents violations. It prevents all kinds of negativity, lessens corrections fatigue, all those things. So it's the smart thing to do. And yes, it's going to cost something up front. But what doesn't that is worth pursuing, really? So let's go to the next slide. And here we have some of you have seen that in a prior training, shocking numbers about mental disorder, race, psychiatric disorder, whatever you want to call them. We have at the end, we have references, tons of studies, both in the United States and in Canada, that show that all the issues that we have up here, PTSD, depression, co-occurring PTSD and depression, and we also have numbers for PTSD, depression, co-occurring with anxiety and substance use. You can imagine what that looks like, what much of a toll that takes on people. Alcohol use disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, sleep disorders, primarily insomnia, suicidal thoughts, and higher risk of death by suicide and higher rates. Um, we see that over and over in studies that we have shocking numbers of those issues, and they are definitely way higher than the general population, several times over. Like depression might be 8, 9%, and here we have like up to 48%, we found in one study. Even if you say just 30%, that's a lot more, like 3 times. And they're even higher than other first responders. And there are many reasons that I can suggest about why they're higher than other first responders, but we won't do it today in this webinar. But these are like huge alarms going off and saying, we have some serious brokenness here that we need to take care of people. This doesn't even show health issues like physical health, like other studies have shown, the higher cholesterol rates, high blood pressure, obesity issues. I mean, these are all undermining. No wonder we talk about shortened life expectancy. So we have these things staring us in the face, and it's like, what are we going to do about it? And how much can you expect of somebody who's been battling suicidal thoughts to deal with somebody on the unit yelling and screaming at them? What kind of self control do you think they'll have? What kind of professionalism will they deliver that day? Like it- we have to do something about it, or we are in deep, deep trouble. So we need to attain staff wellness, and then we need to sustain it. So it's not a flavor of the month. One little phase, one director comes in or one warden, and we have a little push for wellness, and then they change, they retire, they move on, and then we go back to just survival mode. No, we need to sustain. And we need programming, which means investing time, energy, and money, and thinking, a lot of planning, a lot of strategizing, a lot of subject matter experts, because this is a difficult situation. You have such an inevitable number of stressors and negative conditions that you're going to have to really think hard about how do we counter this thing on an ongoing basis that works. So it has to be data driven based on like what works. Let's test and see what results do we get and what have other people found. It has to be system wide. It cannot be just the custody staff. It cannot, a lot of times they say, oh, do we have to send the non-custody, non-security to training? Like, yes, they're in the same pressure cooker. So it has to be system-wide. It has to be comprehensive. And we talk about including family members, at least adult family members, who are definitely impacted, and work goes home and home comes to work. So we need to look at family. We need to look at retirees and people about to retire, and because they have a seriously higher suicide rate, at least some indication of that exists. It has to be correction specific so people don't feel like we borrowed something from police or fire departments. No, it's about their situations, their circumstances. And it has to be holistic, and we use the word with a W, like a whole approach, and look at different facets of wellness. And that's where we lean heavily on SAMHSA's 8 dimensions of wellness that Greg will talk about next. So we have to have programs that meet all those 5 requirements. And that's what we attempted to do with our safety net accreditation, hitting all those things and saying, okay, now we can have a comprehensive way to attack this multifaceted, humongous challenge. And remember, people also come into work with their own issues from before. So they may have, like veterans, they may have their own stuff already brewing in the background, or a health diagnosis or something, and they're even more vulnerable. So we have to really work hard to keep their heads above water and get them to swim properly. So, Greg, why don't you take it and run with this now?
Okay, will do. Um, the phrase that Katerina ended up with there, holistic, essentially means that we're taking a look at wellness. We being Desert Waters and the Safety Net Accreditation Program, we're taking a look at wellness from a multidimensional perspective. Um, SAMHSA is a federal organization, and we have adopted their 8 dimensions of wellness as a model for um, how to design a multidimensional, comprehensive, holistic wellness culture in an organization. They're not specifically a correctional organization, but we have applied their 8 dimensions to the corrections profession. And so that's what we want to do is go over each one of those 8. You'll notice that physical wellness is on the list, but it's only one of the items on the list, only one of the dimensions on the list. And that's because our wellness needs are different from person to person, and they vary throughout our lives. As we age, as our children, assuming we have a family, as our children age, health conditions happen. Our financial setting, our financial situation may change. Anyway, we're going to take a look at all of those. Go ahead, Justin. We can move on to the very first one. And the thing about each of these 8 dimensions is that each of them could probably take up an hour-long webinar by themselves. But what we're trying to get a picture of here is what a wellness culture would look like broadly in a correctional organization. And please don't think that, how do I want to put this? That I speak with any, I don't know, great facility at making this, actually having made this happen on the job. I'll give you a story before too long that shows me as not just a bad example, but about the worst example you could probably find. So one of the things we need to do is be clear about what does exist in our organizational cultures around wellness. Managing stress well, coping with challenges constructively, maintaining relationships that are healthy, supportive, and meaningful. What do I want to add to that? The relation, Katerina mentioned it already, that the relationships that we have during a significant incident are pretty profound. We call each other family, brothers and sisters. And that's good. It's necessary. We need that. What I've scratched my head about for years, though, is what are the relationships that we have, how healthy and supportive are the relationships we have the rest of the time. At other times when things are kind of boring and there's no real immediate event to interact to. Personally, I think we're a pretty gossipy kind of profession. We talk about each other behind their backs. I remember starting at the pen in Oregon and thinking, oh, shoot, I can do this, because that's what you do, is you make jokes and gossip about people behind their backs. Well, we're going to talk about meaningfulness several different points along the way here with these 8 dimensions. But that would be a question mark that I would ask you to put by your organizational culture. How healthy, supportive, and meaningful are your relationships at routine times? At routine times, I guess that's the best way to put it. And from there, we're going to talk about social relationships here in a minute, so I'll skip that. Okay, keep going, Justin. Thank you. Environmental wellness. Now, this is not a subject that we spend much time talking about in our profession. Part of the reason is that our facilities are concrete and steel, and there ain't much you can do about that. They've been that way for decades and decades upon decades, and in many cases. There are agencies that are addressing that. There's a concept now being floated in correctional settings called environmental psychology. And the notion there is that the environments that we work in influence the relationships that we have with each other. So we're not, as a profession, generally not there all the way, but there are agencies that there are a couple of states that are on our webinar today, participants, where I know that there have been conversations about how stimulating and supportive is the environment of this institution that we all work in. Of course, they have to be safe, respectful of personal and shared areas, aesthetically pleasing. There are agencies and facilities that are moving things that way, appropriately stimulating. Most of our correctional facilities are the opposite of stimulating. And the question that you would ask then is, why would we want them to be stimulating? Well, it's for you. It's not just for the population that we're supervising, but that it is for you. so that the environment is actually supportive of the work that um, we want you to do. Um, the the Our environmental wellness, of course, is influenced by um, the maintenance and physical plant and the budget of the facilities that we work in. And so this is a huge area of issue, I guess you might say, that most organizations don't see as a wellness culture um, concept. But we'd like to encourage you to consider that. Katerina?
Yeah, I'd like to. It's not something I was thinking of talking about, but one thing we were struck by in Norway was how hard they tried to make things like more like nature and paintings and beauty. And I remember reading a study years ago about a jail that had a very nice nature-based mural painted, and how people talked about the reduction in stress and their blood pressure reduction into more normal, just having a big mural of nature. And as far as the appropriately stimulating, I'm thinking that also in prisons and jails you have noxiously stimulating environment, a lot of noise, too much light, artificial light, too much like coming and going if there's overcrowding. So it's like overwhelming in a negative way and draining. And then, of course, you have extreme temperatures, either very, very hot, up to 120 degrees in some places in the summer, or the water's freezing in the toilets being so cold. So harsh environment. So environmental wellness, we may poo-poo it at first, but really it affects us. It seeps through our pores of our being. We were not recognizing it. It's like we're inhaling it. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I completely agree, Katerina. It's not something we pay attention to, and if it is something that you want to investigate, I suggest that you Google something in regards to environmental psychology. It won't just be a correctional practice, but it will be probably an interesting uh, issue for you to consider in applying in the profession. Okay, Justin, thanks. And this is another area, financial wellness, that we don't think of very frequently in terms of how we would take it on as an organization. And yet, everybody has boundaries. Is that the right way to put it? Everybody has limitations financially. Um, Being able to manage one's life financially contributes to our wellness. Managing resources responsibly, reasonably secure and satisfied with current and future financial circumstances. I'll tell you one thing I wish we had done in the time that I had impact on an organization's training is bringing in retirees to talk about what their retirement finances were like, and if there was any planning that an employee could do during their work life that would help assist their retirement financial planning. Not an area that we normally think of when we think in terms of wellness, but it's there for all of us, and it lasts our whole life. Thanks, Justin. We're a much more complicated profession than we give ourselves credit for. The I have a very strong personal opinion about how much learning and critical thinking should go into the profession of corrections. Again, we'd spend quite a bit of time um, uh, talking about this one wellness dimension. Um, how do you? So I'll just end it by asking: are you curious about how your job works? Are you curious about the, the how your impact, how your interactions have impact on the offenders that you supervise? Where where are the skills? Where's the knowledge that you need to be able to pursue that work effectively? Personally, as I said, I believe we're a much more complicated, intellectually complicated profession than we give ourselves credit for, and that the community gives us credit for that matter. Um, Curiosity is a big motivator in this case. Justin, occupational wellness. I take a heavy sigh here. Finding meaningful purpose and satisfaction in your work roles or if you volunteer, aligning responsibilities with personal values and professional goals. The the comment I made earlier about we're kind of a gossipy profession. We don't talk to each other about meaningful things um, in in uh, in times of in routine times. And I would urge us all to do that, to consider how important our job is, how culturally important our job is in the communities in which we live, and to take purpose and satisfaction from that and apply it to the work that you do. You'll find as we go through these eight is that the word meaning comes up in three of them. We're not completely done yet, but how meaningful is your profession? Is this profession to you? That's I, to me, um, it's why you go to work. It's why a person goes to work in any profession, is because it is meaningful to them. Um, so again, I put a question mark by that. How is that built into your culture? And now we go ahead, Justin. Physical wellness. Talked about this, right from the beginning. You guys have jumped in there automatically to talk about regular physical activity, having gyms, fitness centers. It's good for organizations um, to put those in place. And then that's the top down part. The bottom up part is staff need to take advantage of them. Get out there and use those physical fitness centers. Nutrition, um, sleep. Oh, another heavy sigh there. That one is we did a webinar on sleep. Katarina and I did a couple months back. That's available on the YouTube channel. It is once we solve all these other issues, sleep is still something that needs to be addressed because of its impact on us neurologically, our physical, emotional, mental health is affected by our sleep. And preventive care, let me see if I had a note here. Yeah, I remember that we contacted the local American Cancer Society and had them come in and do stop smoking clinics for staff. That was a one-time thing. That was a flavor of the month thing. We didn't build it in, but it's the kind of thing to think about because from there, go ahead, Justin. You get connected to the community and social wellness, building and maintaining personal relationships, enjoyable, supportive connection, teamwork, and belonging. We so I'll start with this notion of being a part of a part of your local society. What elements of the community can you bring into your organization to overlap meaningfulness um, from the community and into the work that you do? But the other thing I want to say here is, excuse me, because there are organizations that have Fourth of July picnics, for example, that they co-sponsor with community organizations, um, Christmas parties, family picnics, whatever it might happen to be. Now, keep in mind that those kind of events are helpful in building a culture, but there are the other dimensions that need to be taken care of as well. Um, and so I'll just emphasize on this slide how potent sometimes, I don't want to judge any organization without knowing them directly, but how potent sometimes us versus them is in our social interactions. We build in relationship boundaries with the offenders and residents that we supervise, but those and that's absolutely professionally necessary. Unfortunately, those boundaries then become well, us versus we call it us versus them, and the security treatment dichotomy becomes an us versus them um, uh, uh, conflict. Um, anyway, I could go on there yet again. We could talk about this. The though anybody that works with labor organizations will know that there is um, a, a disconnection that can happen, and it takes a lot of work to create a sense of supportive and belonging and meaningful interactions. And then the last one, Justin, not something again that we talk about very often, but our spiritual wellness. It is a part of our lives, regardless of what our spiritual inclination might be, which is going to be quite varied. So we're recommending that spiritual wellness be recognized at the individual level, not at the group level, at the individual level. But again, it you see right there in the middle about meaningfulness. What meaning do you bring to the job? What big picture meaning do you bring to the job? It's not the kind of thing we talk about very often, but I would bet we're gonna talk about entry level values here in a minute. But I would bet that a lot of people do start their career with a need or a desire to do some work in alignment with their core beliefs and values.
Mm.
Now, does your organization support that? Well, these are the 8 dimensions that we want to make a draw a picture of that we want to attend to as we go through. But now we're going to talk about the corrections culture specifically. Katerina?
All right. Thanks for advancing the slide. So, what is workplace culture? Because we keep talking about that. And I remember hearing the word in Italian, cultura, I think, something like that. Like, what is that? Sounds like a cult, right? But it's not. It's about how we do things around here. And that's, by the way, Greg's definition that makes the most sense to me. How do we do things around here? What is like the thing that we assume is going to happen, we expect to happen, we tolerate, we promote, we expect as part of life, as the normal way of doing things. And there is a more formal definition by Jacks about customary and traditional way of thinking and doing, shared by all members, which new team members must learn to be accepted. So they have to kind of be indoctrinated into the culture, like this is how we do things around here. Don't you dare do it the way they told you at the academy, or else you'll pay. Here is how we do it here. And or no, we're not going to put up with this shoddy job. You need to complete this job. This is how we do things around here. We expect thoroughness, we expect honesty, we expect whatever. That's another kind of culture. And so it is based on shared values, beliefs, and behaviors. And of course, there will be always some people who may say they share them, but they may not really share them, and that will show in their behavior. But on the whole, it's about shared values, beliefs, and behaviors. And it does not have to be bad. It can be really, really good, depending on the culture. And people pick up that stuff by osmosis, just watching how people do things. Like, what kind of jokes are tolerated here? What kind of tone of voice? What kind of level of respect or disrespect is shown that and is accepted? What do people expect about their evaluations? Do they really, like in some places they say, I've heard people say, I do my supervisor's evaluations because he doesn't have time for them. He asks me to do them, and I don't even know the people that I'm doing and writing an evaluation for. And but I have to do it because they're telling me to do it. That's not a very healthy culture. And people know that the evaluations are a joke because they are. They're not valid. Um, or they can be extremely carefully done and appropriate. And new staff to survive, to be accepted, to be taken in, to be one of, they have to learn and adapt and do how things are done in that place. And I've heard, I can't tell you how many stories I've heard that people were shunned for as long as they were there as newcomers, new staff, until they were assaulted and showed a certain type of behavior. Then they were let in the group. It's almost like an initiation right in a gang. Sounds terrible, but it's true. Like, oh, you didn't show any emotion. You didn't act like you were overcome by this. Now you're one of us. Um, and the culture becomes so much like the way things are that it's taken for granted and it's like assumed to be there all the time. It's accepted almost like subliminally, and people don't notice it when they've been in it for a long time. It's like a fish in water. I'm sure the fish doesn't see water, it just sees rocks and sand and weeds and other fish. They don't see the water because they're in it. And I think that's what happens with culture. People lose track and they start thinking that's normal. Now a newcomer comes in and get hit between the eyes like, oh my gosh, this is a scary place because, or this is a wonderful place because, um, and it's visible to them because they're new and they have fresh eyes, a fresh set of eyes to look at things with, versus the long-term staff that have become like desensitized to negative things, or hopefully appreciative still of positive things, but they don't notice them. They just expect them to happen that way. So let's go to the next slide. So if you really want to hear about what the culture is like, ask a newcomer, like, what do you think about that place? How is it? How is it? They'll be able to give you more objective, maybe more objective estimation. And then I love this Peter Drucker's quote. It's quoted all over the place that culture eats strategy for breakfast. What do we mean by that? Well, what I think Peter Drucker meant was that executive staff, planners may strategize about how to move things forward, how to raise morale, how to solve a problem of some sort in the organization. But the way the culture will make it or break it. Either it will support it or it will undermine it, and it's dead on arrival. So culture is very, very powerful because it's like the silent either support or the silent opposition and the silent rebellion or silent cooperation. And we need, of course, we talked about that before, we need supportive cultures to make the mission happen of safety, security, rehabilitation, whatever your culture, your mission statement says for your agency. If it's not supportive, people will more or less rebel or disengage. We talk about quiet quitting. What a interesting term. Um, if you don't have supportive cultures, you have a bunch of disengaged people that can hardly wait to get out the door every day and retire. I remember meeting a guy years ago who told me he bought a calendar 4 years before his retirement date and created a calendar, and he was crossing out every day like 4 years earlier, counting the days. Man, what a way to live. Um, and then if we don't have well cultures, healthy cultures, we'll have toxic cultures because you cannot have a total neutral vacuum. You're going to have one thing or another. And toxic cultures drain people. Even the best, the most resilient, they have to be fighting the negativity, the swimming upstream, maybe fighting dishonesty, fighting bullying, fighting reluctance for people to do their job properly. They have to make very, very difficult moral decisions, like do they report if policy violation? Do they not? Are they going to get ostracized if they do? But they cannot not do it. They have to do it, and it's terribly anxiety provoking. That's why people quit sometimes. And of course, it fuels corrections fatigue, which is the whole thing of people changing. It's not just feeling physically tired, it's changing as a person from being a bubbly, friendly, warm, approachable person to being distant, cold, maybe aggressive, mistrusting, all those things and more. And we won't get into correction fatigue right now in depth, but it's not just a physical thing, and it's not just a bad mood. It's a hardcore rewiring of who you are, not for the better. Let's go to the next slide, please. So what kind of cultures tend to prevail in corrections? Like I said at the beginning, people don't put caring and corrections culture together very often, but we need to hook them up together because it's do or die. As far as I'm concerned, we have to do that, or nobody will want to sign up and do this job uh, after you retire. Nobody will want to take your place. So we have a paramilitary culture where what's emphasized is the rank, toughness, denial of pain and suffering and need, and of course hierarchy. And like you do as I say, because I'm a rank above you, there's no room for discussion or explanation or anything. Sometimes that's unhealthy cultures. The paramilitary can become way too rigid. It's needed to a degree, but it can become way too rigid and people can't breathe. Then admitting reality, like, yes, I am affected. Yes, I'm still shaken by this, or I do need some time off, or I do need something, and it's not weakness. It's just about being human and having, like Greg said earlier, we all have limitations. We have limitations, and we have to be honest about that. Otherwise, we'll keep pushing through till we can't anymore, or we make a huge mistake, or we lose it with somebody. And then there has been a tendency in all the public safety professions, not just corrections, to fear of to admit that one is having a serious mental health struggle because there is a fear of losing one's job, like I cannot carry a firearm, blah, 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 whatever. And therefore I have to feed my family. I'd better fake it, fake it and keep going. Meanwhile, it's like having an earthquake internally, but faking it on the outside, like everything is fine. And then sometimes we have cases where people say, he looked just fine. We had no idea he was suicidal. What happened? He never let anybody know of anything, but they have just killed themselves. Um, and then it's fear of judgment from peers and managers, being ridiculed or not being chosen for promotion, seeing like being too fragile. That has been the culture up to now. I think things are shifting some. There is more openness. There is more acknowledgement. I mean, I've been in this line of mission. I don't want to call it work because for us it's a mission for really 25 years and formal with Desert Waters almost 23. And I've seen a shift, a lot more openness, but we still have a long way to go because we have to put our money where our mouth is and we have to do something about it a lot more than surface because surface won't cut it. It's too deep. It runs too deep and it's too relentless. And we get the phone calls, the emails, all that stuff, and we know what it looks like when somebody's really struggling. They need help. They are not in the minority. I hate saying that, but it's true. They are not the few. They're a lot more struggling, and just the lack of sleep is enough to undermine people. And what have we gotten? All this mandatory overtime for the last few years. People are literally losing it from lack of sleep and crashing, driving home, all kinds of stuff, you know. So let's go to the next slide. So the whole thing that we talked about, learning culture in day one, like how do we treat people? How do we treat them? And what message do we give them? Do we give them a message of will help you grow and become more professional, more polished, your skills will get improved. You will teach you on and make it possible for you to have a balance between your home life and your work life because it's okay to say it, but if you don't let people go home day after day after day, how can they keep a balance? I mean, they may have all the theory, but we're not letting them. Somebody told me I've been taken hostage by my agency, and I thought it was such a great way of putting it. So we have to make it possible. And like the message has to go out, like you matter and your survival and thriving does matter. So people who come into the business definitely see how people are treated. How do supervisors talk to subordinates? How do peers talk to one another? What do people say about somebody behind their back? Um, So that's how culture gets absorbed, again, by osmosis, just breathed in. And Greg has a lot of examples he can share with you
Yeah.
later.
Can,
Go
can,
ahead.
can I can I jump in here now, Katarina?
Please, please
I,
do.
I couldn't figure out how to raise my hand on the
I saw your hand, but I wasn't
Zoom
sure.
on
Okay.
the Zoom. But I want I just none of us are perfect, and boy am I going to give an example of that. And it relates to a comment that was made in the chat about what kind of jokes do we allow. For 10 years, I was the new employee training coordinator at a maximum security penitentiary. And we didn't have, at the time, the whole agency wasn't as big as it is now. So we didn't have an academy. We did all of our new employee training in house. And I had every new employee for a month. Um, and what I didn't realize until recently, until now, is that what that meant was I was introduced, me personally, I was introducing them to the culture of our institution more than any other person during the first month of their career. Okay, well, that's fine. That's part of a job. And so that's what you're going to do. Well, like I said, I have a gossipy nature and I like making jokes. Jokes are just, I don't know, the reason to live. Um, which is all fine. But then when I took our new employees out to our firing range where we did the weapons training, chemical agents training, um, uh, stuff like that, I had a different menu of jokes. They were all dirty jokes. For some reason, I thought that was mainly just men, boys with their guns out in the country. What are we going to do? Well, we're going to tell each other dirty jokes. And so, please do not think that I'm coming at this from a highly overly overly professional point of view. I know how bad things can be for new employees, and to think now that I spent 10 years of my career influencing an organizational culture with that kind of very inappropriate, highly inappropriate sense of humor is very embarrassing to me. And so I'll just quit here and hand it off to Katerina. But say, as you examine your organizational culture, take a look at how your introductory orientation culture is carried out, especially if it's done in an academy that's different from your local agency, from your local facility. There will be a culture there, and you would want to make sure that you analyze and assess that culture as well as your own agency or facility culture. Thanks, Katerina, for letting me interrupt
Oh,
there.
wow. That's so right on because I couldn't tell that story. It's your
Yeah,
story. So we
no,
can have yeah,
yeah,
a positive culture where, and I've seen agencies sometimes they give their staff a discount or they pay for their gym membership. They encourage that working out and have healthy food options, not just a salad bar, healthy food options in general versus the typical vending machine stuff or having to have the food of the institution that may be usually high fat, high carbohydrates and refined flour and all that stuff. And making it available, having it possible. And I know some places that did put in um, machines that had healthier food that was changed every day, replaced, which is more expensive. But again, how do you put a price tag on diabetes or heart disease? And the whole thing of providing peer support that is really peer support, trained and professional. And then we talked about the compression rooms in the chat earlier. The key again is being able to get away from those things, like for example, not being so exhausted by the overtime that the last thing on your mind is going to a fitness center, or you have like 3 hours to go home and sleep and come back. You're not going to go use a fitness center, or you're going to grab something that is an immediate reward, food wise, that stimulates your your tongue and your whatever your appetite, but not go for a healthy thing. Decompression rooms, you have to be allowed to get off the floor, off your job, to go to that decompression room. If they cannot relieve you to go because they're so short, then it just sits empty. So we have to have the intention and the actual practice line up. And people are watching that. Like, is this for real? Or is this just checking a box? And that's what we hear all the time. This is just about to check a box. We can never use those benefits or sparsely or whatever. And we need improvement in that area because we have the room, but not time to use it. Let's go to the next slide. And again, we talked about the wellness culture or the unspoken expectations. And as new people come in as a definition of wellness culture, unspoken expectations around staff well-being. Do we expect them to just keep gaining weight? Like I remember a lady told me, she was a custody professional. She said, in my 20 years, I got two of me. And I said, what do you mean you got two of you? She says, I doubled my weight. So imagine talking to a new person coming on the job and saying, hey, in a few years, there'll be two of you. Versus let's stay in shape, let's whatever, make a concerted effort to stay healthy physically, etc. And new staff notice whether something is truly supported in deed as well as in word, or if it's not supported in deed, only in word, or if there's neither deed nor word, or it's not even on the radar. Like I was told of a situation where a new sheriff came to town and the first thing he did was boot out the wellness team, saying, we don't need this, boys, do we? Okay, so there you go, back 10 years behind now. They didn't dismiss their wellness efforts as something we don't need. Um, so new people notice that and they may decide to stay or go depending on what they notice. The next slide, please. And the thing that's very empowering to me to think about is that every employee is a leader. We can lead, and we do lead either formally with a title, whatever, and authority bestowed upon us, or informally by role modeling and holding the line, whatever line we do for better or for worse. And so a leader shapes culture. And it's around the clock. People watch how things are done around the clock and who initiates what and how they're received. And role modeling is a powerful, powerful, powerful thing because it impacts people. It gets them imprinted in people's minds, in their memory. They say, whoa, this is how they handle this. That's admirable. Or, whoa, that's kind of scary. I don't want to end up like them. Um, and a point that Greg likes to make, and I'm sure he'll pick up on it as we go to the next slide, is that different shifts or work days, like weekend versus during the week, or day shift versus evening and night, they may have their own different cultures. So it's the same institution, but you have different leaders, you have different expectations, different stressors to some degree, maybe. And so you may have a different shift. And it has to be really, we need to have leaders that are very emotionally intelligent to be able to pick up on all those nuances and those things and kind of address them in a skillful way because they are there. Whether you address them or not, they're not going to, if you don't address them, it's just that they will stay unaddressed. So we have to figure out ways to, and then design ways to reach people. Like I know I've talked to people who are on night shift forever, and I said, "What made you choose that?" And the common reply I get is, "I need to stay away from the brass. That way, I stay away from the brass. I don't have to deal with that." And so they're kind of hiding for their entire career and at night because it feels safer. It feels less stressful to them. And but there is that fragmentation, that isolation, that disconnection, which is not good for the culture overall. And what kind of message are they giving to the new recruits showing up that are stuck in the on night shift for maybe a year or two when they first show up? They're basically giving them the message: you want to duck and hide. We cannot trust those people at the helm, and it's not a good way to start somebody out on a new job, in my opinion. Greg, do you want to run with it?
Yeah. Um, Go ahead, Justin. The one of the things that we want to emphasize here in as you talk about the training, as you guys in the chat talk about the training that you do, um, one of the main concepts in training application is the notion of training to job transfer. And what that means is the training doesn't just die at the range or in the classroom or online when you're doing it online, but it actually transfers to the job. That's where the training is relevant. Well, in this case, wellness related training is training to life transfer. This is where where we're recommending that the culture is able to impact um, human life, the life of employees on the job and off the job, including, of course, families. We haven't talked about families very much, but again, we could spend a whole webinar talking about family relationships as they relate to each of the SAMHSA dimensions and the other wellness culture concepts that we've talked about. Um, so what I want to do now is just finish up with a quick look at the layers of an organization. Um, Go ahead, Justin, and talk about how each one of those different layers influences the culture and influences wellness. So if you're going to do some data analysis, if you're going to do some investigation into the culture of your organization, and you want to ask new employees, well, this is because they're the ones who are going to recognize the culture more than anybody else, since it's invisible to all the staff. Um, this is one question to ask: is forget what you learned in training, which of course everybody has heard that phrase and probably said it a million times. But if that's the case, then that is a cultural issue that needs to be addressed. Informal leaders matter the most. And that's related to what Katarina said about I want to have a shift where I don't have to deal with the brass. Well, what that means is that you then are the leader of the organization on swing shift, on night shift, on weekends, on holidays, when when the executive administrative staff aren't there. Who are the leaders? Well, generally, it's veteran frontline staff. So do you have the ability in your wellness culture to influence that group? And one of the subgroups within that I want to emphasize are the frontline staff who want to promote to supervisory staff. Those are people who know the profession, who know the business. They're lifers um, in training. They are just starting to be lifers in the profession, but they've seen the profession and they want to contribute to it positively in the future. That group of frontline staff who are interested in promoting to supervisory positions, doing some investigation into why they want those promotions. Is it for the money? Is it for more authority? Or is it because they recognize the meaning in the mission of the organization? Is it because they want to contribute to a wellness culture? Is it because they recognize healthy versus unhealthy behaviors? Those those individuals, as they promote, since they've indicated that that is part of their career incentive, those folks can be very important in identifying and managing and maintaining that positive wellness culture. Justin? And from there, you go to first line supervisors, obviously the bridge between managers and frontline staff. Heavy sigh, take a deep breath. Do your frontline supervisors understand, apply, coach, and practice wellness principles? When I had a job as a staff training administrator, I would tell our trainers who worked around the state, imagine the most fatigued lieutenant and captain in your institution, those are the ones who have the greatest ability to influence the culture of the organization. That's a very negative comment, but as the third bullet that says there, one dismissive reaction can derail training. You got two staff talking to each other about new interaction skills that they had just learned, and the supervisor walks by and just snorts. You know, doesn't even have to say anything. And then the training goes out the window because that's who the leader is on that shift. But if you find um, uh, champions at the first line supervisor level, wellness champions, they are ideal leaders for whatever pilot program that you want to put in place. That is the place where culture comes to life, is with first line supervisors. We're a 24/7 business. It's got to happen all day, every day. Thank you, Justin. Mid-level managers, is employee wellness as strong a cultural value as security procedures? Now, there is a big picture future of corrections profession question, future of the corrections profession question. We say staff are our greatest resource. Well, is that's what we say, but what do we do? Having managers as adjunct trainers to reinforce a wellness culture, ensuring that their supervisors support wellness, ensuring that their policy and resource decisions reflect wellness values. And again, back to SAMHSA, the wellness values that we're recommending are multidimensional. This is, I recognize that mid-level managers in any organization, in your agency and facility, I'm sure, have full plates of work every day, all day. And so this is recommending that something new be added. But what we're going to talk about here in a minute is the positive impact into the future for them and the work that they do. Go ahead, finishing up. Administrative and executive support must understand and endorse training content. Now, there's a question. Demonstrating commitment equals credibility, must reach policy level priority rather than just be flavor of the month. As you review your policies, most agencies have a policy or procedure review system in place where once a year or something like that, all policies get reviewed. Have employee wellness be a mandatory part of every policy review. Is your use of force, does your use of force policy have an employee wellness element to it? Does your searches policy have an employee wellness element to it? Working with mentally ill offenders, does that have an employee wellness element to it? Anyway, as you go through your policy, offender visiting, does that have an employee wellness element to it? Build support of employee wellness into the promotional process. Again, looking back on my career, I wish I had been able to recommend that be a mandatory promotional element. That support for employee wellness was necessary for promotion. And so what we want to end up with is our 3 slides that talk about how this can impact. Go ahead, Justin. How this can impact us financially as an organization. When staff are informal recruiters, either or discouragers of potential applicants. When you talk to somebody in the community, family, friends, neighbors, whoever it might happen to say, and they say something to you that's just as simple as, what's it like to work there? That's a culture question. What they're asking you is, what is the culture of the organization where you work? If you want me to come work there, if I'm curious about coming to work there, then what's it like to work there means, what is the culture of the organization? Culture has budgetary implications. Move on to the next slide. If after recruitment, retention, it almost doesn't even need to be said. Um, Retention is based on can be based on healthy workplace culture. I guess I'll just leave it at that. In everything that we've said, um, this is this is crucial, um, and it's also where the jokes that we tell, the supportive and meaningful conversations we have with our coworkers, um, how us versus them gets played out in the security treatment dichotomy. That's where it's odd to think that those have budgetary implications, but they do. That's why people either leave or stay. Those are the kinds of reasons why people either leave or stay. Um, so anyway, just more to be considered. And then moving to the next slide, here's just a summary of what we've just talked about. New employees may be able to identify culture faster than anyone else. They may be reluctant to talk about what the culture is. We haven't mentioned the notion of exit interviews yet, but I'd be curious to know if anybody works in an agency or facility that does exit interviews. Talk to new staff who decide not to stay. Why are they not staying? There might be some cultural information there that would be useful to you. Frontline staff, role modeling, supervisors, coaching, managers, resources and policy decisions reflect values. Is wellness an organizational value? Security and safety and security is always an organizational value. How about employee wellness? And at the executive level, what's your long-term perspective? Katerina?
Thank you. So, how revolutionary it would be for people to take it seriously and embrace the fact that staff wellness needs to be at the same level as safety and security. I mean, that would really, really, really make an impact for the better, I believe, and shake up a lot of stuff because it gives a hugely strong message to people about reality. Like you cannot, like I said, you cannot function well when you yourself are broken. I mean, you can do it maybe for a while through tenacity, but eventually you'll falter. We will all would. So the key points we were emphasizing today is that we have to bake culture, wellness into culture from day one. Either it does get baked into culture from day one or it does not, and that is not a good thing. And I have heard people contact us about why they were leaving, and it was definitely more cultural than not, um, a lot of times. And again, the leadership being important, that you're not a small little person somewhere in a corner. You affect people around you. We all have this sphere of influence, and we affect people and we shape things for the better or not. And use, useful training goes past theory and ideas and daydreaming and vision to practice, implementation, making it part of your daily living and your style and how the kind of choices you make and the kind of responses you give. And absolutely, wellness is key to recruitment and retention. And it's not just in corrections. I was reading some other an article about businesses out there. It's the same thing. They realize that if they don't have i- s- employees that are well, everything lags or falls to pieces. And they had to, and they focused on wellness and they improved all kinds of things. And it is mission critical because either it makes a system or it breaks it. I read an amazing study from Santa Fe, it's the sheriff's office in New Mexico, in Santa Fe, and they came up with something I think is called 4840, and they have 4 day weeks, 8 hours of work, but also 2 hours of wellness per day, physical, psychological, whatever. And they increased their improvements, I mean, their numbers for all kinds of positives and reduced all kinds of negatives. It is like amazing. And they're now doing a pilot number 2. And it's like, wow, can you imagine going to work 4 days a week, 8 hours of work, and then 2 hours of personal wellness? And you get paid for it. So we need to do something out of the box. And the question is, lands on all our laps, what can I do to increase wellness culture? What can I contribute? Because every little tributary uh, adds to the water of the river, and we need to kind of keep feeding this and trying one thing, trying another. If something doesn't work, try something different and be motivated. And of course, we need to last the duration to be able to see improvement, because nothing is going to happen really quickly. Nothing that lasts is going to happen very quickly. So thank you for the very lively chat. We have some slides with the references, and but all that stuff will be on chat on YouTube. Justin, do you want to go to the okay, we have these. Okay. All right. So and then we have one more slide, I think. Whoops. Well, yeah, there we go with some more other references. And then one more slide after that. We have one more slide after that, I believe. Yes, there we go. Different studies. So, and there are lots more, lots more. So we have questions, and if in the chat, if
You know,
Justin, you want to,
a lot
yes.
of the comments in the chat were comments.
Okay.
And so I
Uh,
didn't, if I missed a question, please repost it.
there's one just now that came in. Will this be offered any other time? Maybe next year. It will be, the recording will be available on our YouTube channel, so one can watch it. If you want to share the link, we'll be sending out the link in a week or so to anybody who signed up for this
I think
webinar.
I think they were referring to the Norway
Oh,
one
the
next month.
Norway.
And so usually you can look for, if you register, you'll get the email when the YouTube video is up, and it is usually posted within a week of when the live webinar airs. We got to go
Okay.
through and edit and make sure everyone looks pretty and sounds right.
Well, thanks to all of you for taking the time from your incredibly busy and important career and day-to-day work, and for the very lengthy and uh, interactive chats. It seemed like there were going to be a bunch of connections that are made from person to person in this group, and that is again, that's how the profession evolves and grows and becomes
Yeah.
stronger.
And
Thanks thanks to everyone.
I want to say Greg has been retired for so many years now, and he still is showing up and doing all this because he cares. And we have other people attending today that are no longer working actively in the system, but are on the outside influencing. And I really want to tip my hats and say thank you, because we need that tenacity, and it gives such a strong message to people that they have value, that they matter, that you're kind of advocating for them. We need advocates for staff, for their well-being, their survival, their health, um, so they can do the job we ask them to do. So thanks
Yes.
for hanging in there after all
Yeah.
those years, and not just saying adios, I'm going to go play golf all the time, which is there's nothing wrong with doing that, but also fitting in this mission, this pursuit of improvement, because we need it. We need it.
Thanks to you all.
Yes. Thank you. We'll
All
maybe
right.
see you next month. Thank you.
So, with that, I'd just like to say thank you for attending today's webinar. We invite you to join us again for next month's webinar entitled The Pillars of Norway's Prison System Lessons for Correctional Leadership. It'll be offered on November 20th, a Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern. And I sent the link out in the chat, and an email will be coming out probably next week with the flyer for that webinar. So, thank you for attending. We appreciate all the support.